Welcome to this first audio program by Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network, recorded on Thursday, the 10th of July, 2014, during Israel's Operation Protective Edge in Gaza, in which more than 100 Palestinians have been killed. We're about to bring you the perspectives of two of Al-Shabaka's policy advisors, Dr. Haidar Eid in Gaza and Samah Sabawi, originally from Gaza but living in Australia. Learn more about them and the critical policy work of Al-Shabaka by visiting our website, www.al-shabaka.org. We go now to Dr. Haidar Eid in Gaza. He is a professor of postcolonial and postmodern literature at Al-Aqsa University. And Dr. Haidar Eid, thank you so much for being with us. How do you describe the situation in Gaza now?
Well, the situation in Gaza right now is very, very bad. And over the last 3 days, Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 87 people, including a family of 8, the family of Al-Hajj in the Khan Yunis refugee camp.
What message would you like to convey to Palestinian and Arab leaders?
I think that now that most Palestinians understand very well that we are left up with one option, and that option does not wait for the Arab leaders or the official leadership of the PLO and the Palestinian Authority, and that option is the option of people's power. This remains the only power that we have. We have understood that the Arab world, represented, of course, by its leaders and governments, is not seriously interested in liberating Palestine. And that's why we've decided to take power into our own hands.
We are speaking with Dr. Haidar Eid. He is policy advisor to Al-Shabaka, and he is living in Gaza. Dr. Eid, how do we change this terrible situation, and what are the options available to the Palestinians? And does it make you feel some optimism seeing Palestinians all over Palestine engaging in actions to resist the occupation?
Yeah. Well, in fact, I want to take you back to the situation in South Africa in the 60s, 70s, until the mid-80s, where people couldn't imagine a situation where black and white South Africans would live together. It was impossible to imagine a situation where Nelson Mandela would be released of jail and would be elected as the first black president of multiracial South Africa. But in fact, that's what happened. So the question is, what exactly happened that made it possible for black South Africans to attain equality with the whites of South Africa? It was actually mass mobilization on the ground, coupled with a global BDS campaign against the apartheid system of South Africa. And because the international community towards the late 80s decided to boycott apartheid South Africa, impose sanctions against it, and divest from companies that used to invest in South Africa, the apartheid system crumbled. And what we are saying right now, that Gaza demands a response from all who believe in a common humanity. It is time to boycott the apartheid Israeli state until it complies with international law. The global BDS campaign is giving us hope, actually. It's a growing campaign that has managed to isolate apartheid Israel, and Israel with the most fascist government in the history of the state of Israel doesn't know how to deal with the growing BDS campaign. So there is hope. People in Gaza, people on the streets of the West Bank, people living in the miserable refugee camps in Syria and Lebanon, actually can see a light at the end of the tunnel when they hear about a BDS campaign in London, for example, or in the United States of America, or in South Africa. So the way forward is to endorse boycott and to forget about the racist two-state solution and start adopting a more inclusive solution, a solution that guarantees equalities for all inhabitants of historic Palestine. And I cannot see any other solution other than a secular democratic state for all of its citizens, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, etc.
That was Dr. Haidar Eid speaking to us from his home in Gaza. Now we go to Melbourne, Australia, where Al-Shabaka policy advisor Samah Sabawi works as a writer, playwright, and public relations expert. Samah, despite the fact that you are thousands of miles away from Gaza, as a Palestinian who has family and friends in Gaza, what messages you would like to convey to your listeners?
It is true. I'm very closely connected with the people on the ground in Gaza. I've got family, friends, colleagues. So in a sense, that makes watching the bombardment of Gaza all that much harder emotionally. You know, this is no doubt a psychological war on the people of Gaza, as much as it is a physical one. And we feel that when we talk to people over there. Israel feels that it has every right to experiment on the Palestinian people and to socially try to engineer the Palestinian psyche. Most of the time, we've seen in this assault that the decision who lives and who dies seems to be very erratic. And the decision which areas get bombarded and which areas don't is also very erratic and very unpredictable. So no one knows what's going to happen next. And no one has a sense of security or a sense of safety. No children, no families are spared. So there's a sense of collective punishment in the extreme. Everyone is feeling the wrath of Israel right now. But I also want to point out that what we're seeing really is a failure of our own failure as members of the international community and as global citizens to provide a political solution and to enforce the implementation of international law and human rights in that region. We all play a part in this. Israel relies on the support of its international allies to literally allow it to get away with murder. I feel that the global community has a significant role to play in bringing about a just solution to this conflict.
I'll remind our listeners that we are speaking with policy advisor to Al-Shabaka, Samah Sabawi, who's in Australia. What are the options that Palestinians have to acquire their freedom and self-determination?
Palestinians have really three options, and I will go through them with you. They have the option to submit. Hamas can step back and can try to salvage a unity government, which in essence will put the PA in charge of both Gaza and the West Bank. This option will mean that things might get a little bit better for people in Gaza in terms of freedom of movement. It may mean that the crossing will open a few more days or will open on a regular basis, and that the people will be allowed to travel in and out of Gaza. Now, under this option, the PA is likely to continue to negotiate with Israel, hoping that at the end of the road there will be a state which is in essence going to be a few Bantustans that would put the PA elite class in a better position than the rest of the Palestinian population. But this option means that the Palestinians will continue to live in total submission under not only the brutal control of their occupiers, Israel, but also they will be expected to ensure Israel's security by way of continuing collaboration with the Israeli security services, as is the case now in the West Bank. There is no freedom or justice at the end of this option. Now, the second option is armed resistance. Hamas can continue its militant approach. It really has nothing to lose at this point. It is now fighting for its very survival. It has lost its allies in the region, and especially it's the support of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood. So they may persist with their militant resistance, and this might lead to or instigate an armed third Intifada. This option would really spell the end of the PA and Mahmoud Abbas, because they will find their forces and their presence at odds with Palestinian protesters and with Palestinian resistance. Palestinian factions will tolerate each other, and in fact, they might even unite against Israel and see it as a common enemy. This option will be messy and it will be violent, and its outcome is really not guaranteed. The problem with the use of violence against Israel is that not only will it not cause great damage to the world's fourth most powerful army, but we will be losing a lot of clout in terms of public opinion in the international arena. Israel will be able to claim that it is fighting back in self-defense. The third option is nonviolent resistance. Now, for this option to work, we need to intensify our efforts as members of the international community and as global citizens to hold Israel to account by supporting Palestinian civil society's call for boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. This option means that Palestinians will maintain their moral high ground. It means Israel will be exposed for its violent and its ruthless behavior. And we know that boycotts work. We have seen incredible successes for the boycott movement.
Samah, do you feel some optimism seeing Palestinians all over Palestine engaging in actions to resist the occupation.
Absolutely. I do feel a great sense of optimism. Israel has tried to fragment Palestinians by cutting off communities from each other, by instilling checkpoints, by building high walls, by disconnecting, in essence, Gaza from the West Bank, let alone really thinking about factional division within the Palestinian politics as well. But despite all of that, we are a united people and we do feel one another's pain. And I think it's great to see in the last period that unity come through at a grassroots level.
Thanks to our guests, Dr. Haidar Eid and Samah Sabawi, on this first broadcast of Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network. Please visit our website at www.al-shabaka.org to learn more about our unique policy work and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.